Echoes of the Fall. Chapter 1, The Fall. The city of Boston was a sea of lights as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the bustling streets. Ethan Bellwether, a young man with a mop of unruly brown hair and a passion for history, sat in his favorite armchair, engrossed in a dusty tome about ancient warfare tactics. A half-empty cup of coffee sat on the table beside him, forgotten in the thrill of the past. "Ethan!" his father's voice boomed from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready!" "Just a minute, Dad," Ethan replied, his eyes glued to the page. He traced the diagrams of Roman legion formations with his finger, a spark of excitement igniting in his chest. But before he could finish the paragraph, a blinding flash filled the window, followed by a deafening roar that shook the house to its foundations. Ethan leaped from his chair, heart pounding, and rushed to the window. The city skyline was ablaze, tongues of fire licking at the sky. Strange, sleek shapes darted through the air, casting eerie shadows on the terrified faces below. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he watched a building crumble into dust, its occupants swallowed by a cloud of debris. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, his voice trembling. "Ethan!" His mother's scream pierced the chaos. "Get to the bunker, now!" He spun around to see his parents racing towards him, their faces etched with fear. His father grabbed his arm and pulled him towards a hidden door in the floor. Ethan stumbled down the steep steps, his heart pounding in his chest. The bunker was dark and musty, but it offered a sanctuary from the hellish scene unfolding above. As the door slammed shut behind them, the ground shook violently. The lights flickered, then died, plunging them into darkness. Ethan's mother lit a kerosene lamp, casting a dim glow over their faces. "What was that?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. His father's face was grim. "Aliens," he said. "They're invading." Ethan's mind raced. Aliens? Invasion? He had always been fascinated by the idea of extraterrestrial life, but this was beyond his wildest imaginings. The reality of the situation was terrifying. "What are we going to do?" he asked, his voice filled with desperation. His father sighed. "We wait it out," he said. "Hopefully the military can drive them off." But Ethan wasn't satisfied with just waiting. He knew there had to be something they could do, some way to fight back. He began exploring the bunker, his fingers tracing over the shelves filled with old books and documents. In a dusty corner, he stumbled upon a stack of leather-bound volumes. Curiosity piqued, he pulled one out and opened it. The pages were filled with diagrams, maps, and detailed descriptions of military tactics from ancient civilizations. A spark of hope ignited in Ethan's chest. If the ancients could find ways to overcome their enemies, so could he. He spent hours poring over the books, studying the strategies and adapting them to the modern world. He knew it was a long shot, but he had to try. As the days turned into nights, Ethan's determination grew. He knew he couldn't just sit back and let the Krill take over his planet. He had to fight for himself, for his family, for humanity. Chapter 2, The Spark of Defiance. Ethan emerged from the bunker, the cool night air a stark contrast to the stale, confined space below. The city, once a vibrant symphony of lights and sounds, was now a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered glass. The Krill, with their sleek, armored forms and glowing eyes, patrolled the streets, their weapons held at the ready. Ethan ducked into an alley, his heart pounding in his chest. He had spent weeks studying the Krill, their movements, their technology, their weaknesses. The time for hiding was over. It was time to fight back. He crept through the shadows, his eyes scanning the rooftops for signs of movement. A group of Krill soldiers rounded a corner, their attention focused on a flickering holodisplay. Ethan took a deep breath, his hands tightening around a makeshift weapon crafted from scavenged Krill parts. With a silent prayer, he leaped from the shadows, striking with the speed and ferocity of a cornered animal. The first soldier fell with a surprised grunt, his weapon clattering to the ground. The others reacted quickly, raising their energy rifles. But Ethan was already gone, disappearing back into the darkness. He met with a small band of survivors in an abandoned warehouse, their faces etched with determination. Sarah, a former engineer, had salvaged communication equipment from a downed Krill drone. Marcus, a grizzled veteran, had a knack for explosives, and Anya, a young woman with a fiery spirit, was a natural leader. They won't know what hit them, Ethan said, a confident smirk on his face. The group spent hours poring over Ethan's ancient military manuals, adapting the tactics of Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan to fight an enemy from the stars. They planned ambushes, sabotage missions, and hit-and-run attacks, striking at the Krill's weak points and then disappearing into the night. News of their successes spread like wildfire through the underground network of resistance fighters. Other cells began to emulate their tactics, striking at the Krill with renewed vigor. The Krill, caught off guard by the sudden surge in resistance activity, struggled to contain the growing rebellion. Zarek, the Krill commander, paced the floor of his command center, his antennae twitching with irritation. "These humans are like insects," he snarled to his second-in-command, "annoying but ultimately insignificant." "They are proving to be more resilient than we anticipated," his subordinate replied cautiously. Zarek scoffed. "Resilience is not enough to defeat superior technology and firepower. We will crush this pathetic uprising." But as the days turned into weeks, the human resistance only grew stronger. Ethan and his team became a symbol of hope, a beacon of defiance in a world shrouded in darkness. They had lit a spark, and it was spreading like wildfire, threatening to consume the Krill's empire. Chapter 3. The Hunter and the Hunted. The Krill patrols grew thicker, their energy rifles scanning alleyways and rooftops with a nervous intensity. The city throbbed with a silent tension, a predator stalking its unseen prey. Ethan and his cell, once a flickering candle in the darkness, had become a bonfire, attracting both admiration and the ire of their hunters. "They're getting bolder," Marcus grumbled, his weathered face etched with worry as they hunkered down in a makeshift hideout. "Their patrols are everywhere." Ethan traced his finger across a map of the city, his brow furrowed in concentration. "They're predictable," he countered. "They follow the same patterns, the same routes. We can use that to our advantage." His gaze settled on a Krill outpost marked on the map. "This one," he said, tapping it with his finger. "Isolated, undermanned, it's a prime target." Anya leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "What's the plan?" Ethan outlined his strategy, drawing on the wisdom of ancient military texts. A diversionary attack to draw the bulk of the Krill forces away, followed by a swift and decisive strike on the outpost. It was a risky plan, but the potential reward was too great to ignore. The raid was a whirlwind of calculated chaos. Smoke bombs obscured the Krill's vision, while Ethan and his team, clad in captured Krill armor, infiltrated the outpost. A symphony of gunfire and explosions echoed through the city as the Krill scrambled to respond to the diversion. Inside the outpost, Ethan led his team through a labyrinth of corridors, their movements swift and silent. They encountered minimal resistance, the Krill caught off guard by the audacity of the attack. They reached the command center, where a lone figure stood with his back to them, his antennae twitching nervously. "Commander Zarek," Ethan said, his voice ringing out in the tense silence. Zarek spun around, his eyes widening in shock. "You!" he snarled, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But Ethan's team had him surrounded, their weapons trained on him. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," Ethan said calmly. Zarek hesitated, his gaze darting between the humans surrounding him. He knew he was outnumbered, outmaneuvered. With a resigned sigh, he lowered his weapon. "You've made a mistake," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "This will not go unpunished." Ethan smiled, a glint of triumph in his eyes. "We'll see about that, Commander." As they led Zarek away, bound and disarmed, Ethan couldn't help but feel a surge of exhilaration. They had captured the hunter, and now the hunted held the advantage. The tides of the war were shifting, and humanity was on the rise. Chapter 4. Shifting Tides. The dim light of a single bulb flickered in the makeshift interrogation room, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. Zarek sat bound to a chair, his normally proud posture slumped in defeat. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, now held a hint of confusion and unease. Ethan stood before him, arms crossed, his face a mask of determination. "We've seen what your kind is capable of, Zarek," he said, his voice low and steady. "The destruction, the suffering. You call yourselves superior, but your actions speak of a different truth. Zarek's antennae twitched, a sign of agitation. We are bringing order to a chaotic universe, he retorted. Humanity is a primitive species, clinging to outdated ideologies and petty squabbles. Order? Ethan scoffed. You call the slaughter of innocents order? The enslavement of entire populations? The destruction of our planet? Zarek remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. Ethan continued, his voice softening. I've read your history, Zarek. You've faced adversity before, overcome challenges, but you've lost your way. You've become the very thing you claim to despise. A flicker of doubt crossed Zarek's face. Ethan pressed on. You're not a monster, Zarek. I see it in your eyes. You're lost, confused, but you're not beyond redemption. Hours turned into days as Ethan and his team engaged Zarek in a battle of words, a clash of ideologies. They showed him footage of the Krill's atrocities, the suffering they had inflicted on humanity. They shared stories of human resilience, of acts of kindness and selflessness in the face of overwhelming odds. Slowly, imperceptibly, Zarek's resolve began to crumble. The cracks in his belief system widened as he witnessed the humanity of his captors, their unwavering spirit, their refusal to surrender. He saw the intelligence and resourcefulness they employed in their resistance efforts, the creativity they used to repurpose Krill technology for their own ends. One evening, as the lamplight flickered low, Zarek finally spoke. Your tactics, he said, his voice barely a whisper. They are unorthodox, unpredictable. We struggle to counter them. Ethan leaned forward, his interest piqued. Tell me more, he urged. Zarek hesitated, then began to speak, his words spilling out like a dam bursting. He revealed the vulnerabilities in the Krill's armor, the weaknesses in their communication networks, the flaws in their energy weapons. It was a treasure trove of information, a roadmap to potential victory. As Zarek spoke, Ethan's mind raced. He saw a way to turn the tide, to exploit the Krill's overconfidence and technological arrogance. A daring plan began to take shape, a plan that could change the course of the war. When Zarek finished, a heavy silence hung in the air. Ethan looked at his team, their faces lit by the dim light. This is our chance, he said. We can use this information to strike back, to show the Krill that we will not be conquered. Anya nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. It's time to fight fire with fire. Chapter 5, Echoes of Triumph. A wave of defiance surged across the globe, a symphony of rebellion orchestrated by whispers in the dark and encoded messages crackling through salvaged Krill tech. The once subdued cities now roared with the thunder of homemade explosives and the clatter of repurposed Krill weaponry. Ethan, his voice amplified through a network of makeshift speakers, rallied the masses. Humanity! His voice boomed through the ruins of New York City, echoing across the plains of Africa and the frozen tundras of Siberia. We will not be slaves. We will not be extinguished. We will fight for our home, for our families, for our future. The Krill, caught off guard by the coordinated uprising, scrambled to respond. Their sleek ships filled the skies, raining down plasma fire. But the human resistance was ready. Utilizing Zarek's intel, they had disabled key power grids and communication relays, sowing chaos in the Krill ranks. Hidden workshops churned out makeshift EMP devices, crafted from scavenged Krill components. They were deployed with deadly precision, disabling Krill drones and disrupting their energy shields. Human fighters, armed with salvaged Krill weapons and guided by ancient tactical manuals, swarmed the streets, engaging in fierce close-quarters combat. Zarek stood on the balcony of his command center, watching in stunned silence as his forces were pushed back. His soldiers, once confident in their superiority, now fought with a desperate, frantic energy. The seeds of doubt sown by Ethan had taken root, spreading through the Krill ranks like a virus. Sir, a Krill officer approached, his voice trembling. Our defenses are failing. We are losing ground. Zarek turned to him, his eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and despair. Then we fight harder, he snarled. We will not be defeated by these primitives. But even as he spoke, a wave of doubt washed over him. He remembered the scenes of human resilience and ingenuity Ethan had shown him. He remembered the faces of the civilians caught in the crossfire, their eyes filled with fear and defiance. The final battle took place in the heart of a ruined metropolis, a clash of wills between two civilizations. Ethan led the charge, his heart pounding with adrenaline as he dodged energy blasts and returned fire with his captured krill rifle. He caught sight of Zarek standing atop a crumbling skyscraper, his face etched with a tortured expression. Their eyes met across the battlefield, a silent communication passing between them. Ethan saw the conflict raging within Zarek, the battle between duty and conscience. He saw a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption. With a final surge, Ethan and his team breached the Krill's last stronghold. Zarek stood before them, his weapon lowered, his face a mask of resignation. "It's over, Zarek," Ethan said, his voice ringing out in the sudden silence. "The war is over." Zarek nodded slowly. "It is," he agreed, "and it is time for me to choose a side." The words hung heavy in the air, pregnant with the promise of a new beginning. A beginning born from the ashes of destruction, forged in the crucible of conflict. A beginning where two species, once enemies, might find a way to coexist, to rebuild a shattered world together. Chapter 6, Forging a New Path. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. Ethan leaned against a worn railing, overlooking a vast expanse of reclaimed farmland. The air buzzed with the gentle hum of solar panels, powering the hydroponic greenhouses that dotted the landscape. A stark contrast to the barren, war-torn wasteland it once was. Zarek joined him, his antennae twitching as he scanned the horizon. "Remarkable," he murmured. "Your people have accomplished much in such a short time." Ethan nodded, a flicker of pride in his eyes. "We've had to. The Krill left us with quite a mess." Zarek's gaze shifted to the ground. "A mess I helped create," he said quietly. "I wish I could undo the harm we inflicted." "You can't change the past," Ethan replied, "but you can help shape the future." Zarek looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I am trying," he said. "I've shared everything I know with your scientists, our technology, our medical advancements." "It's made a difference," Ethan assured him. "We've been able to accelerate our recovery, thanks to your help." A comfortable silence settled between them. The chirping of insects filled the air, a reminder of the delicate balance of nature returning to the land. "What now?" Zarek asked after a while. "What's next for humanity?" Ethan's gaze returned to the horizon, his eyes fixed on a distant glimmer of light. "We rebuild," he said. "We heal. We learn from our mistakes." He turned to Zarek, his expression resolute. "And we ensure that this never happens again." Zarek nodded solemnly. "I hope I can be a part of that future," he said. "A future where humans and Krill can coexist peacefully." "You already are," Ethan replied, placing a hand on Zarek's shoulder. "You've proven yourself to be a friend, an ally. You've helped us in ways we never could have imagined." Zarek's antennae twitched in what Ethan had come to recognize as a smile. "I have much to learn from humanity," he admitted. "Your resilience, your compassion, your unwavering spirit. And we have much to learn from you," Ethan countered. "Your technology, your understanding of the universe." He paused, then added with a grin, "and maybe a few of your cooking recipes." Zarek chuckled, a surprisingly warm sound. "I will teach you how to prepare a proper krill delicacy," he promised. "But be warned, it is an acquired taste." The two friends shared a laugh, their bond deepening with each passing moment. As the sun disappeared completely, the stars emerged, twinkling like 1,000 tiny beacons of hope. Ethan looked up at the vast expanse of the night sky, his heart filled with a quiet determination. The road ahead was long, the challenges many, but he knew that humanity would prevail. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, united by their shared experience, guided by the echoes of their fallen foes. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity was forging a new path, a path paved with resilience, hope, and the unwavering spirit of a species that refused to be extinguished.